Bartonella buddies and fellow health-seeking humans. If you're new to my channel, my name is Jake, and if you're not new to my channel, my name is still Jake. I'm calling this look Prairie Glam. This prairie dress is very short though, so, you know, I'm like a prairie hoe. Before we get into today's video, I just wanted to show you that we got Piper a Buck Bartonella onesie for 6 months. Like, are they a toddler? No, it's a baby. If you're not new to my channel, you will know that I can't be on my feet. I have very limited usage of my hands, and I can only eat 5 foods, and that's been going on for 2.5 years now, which means I've had a lot of time to sit and think. And recently I've been thinking about what would current me go back and say to newly diagnosed me if I could go back in time. There are 2 wrenches that I could throw into this thought experiment. The first one is that I've never been someone who likes to be given advice, especially unsolicited advice. So would newly diagnosed me be receptive to advice from future me? Maybe, but only because it's from me. The second wrench is that there are things that I don't think newly diagnosed me would have been ready to accept. I remember when I first got diagnosed, the idea that I would miss 1 ski season nearly crushed me, so I don't think going back in time and telling myself I was gonna miss a lot more than 1 ski season would have been all that helpful. Whether it was naivete or I was in denial or both, it doesn't matter. It was a coping mechanism that got me through that single day. In this video, I'm only giving newly diagnosed me advice and not you. If you find any of this advice helpful, then great. If you don't, then it wasn't for you anyway. So I think the first thing I would go back and do is tell myself to treat SIBO first. Just kidding, that's cheating. So the real first thing I would advise myself to do is to join Facebook support groups. Now, of course, Facebook groups can be depressing, overwhelming, and rife with misinformation, but I remember when I first got sick, I joined a Bartonella Facebook group, and Amy had posted with resources from Dr. Mozayeni and Dr. Breitschwerdt. From there, I read damn near everything I could get my grubby little hands on from the team at NC State and Galaxy, and I credit that team and their research with quite literally saving my life. Facebook groups have saved my life on more than one occasion. So most recently, I went on a 12-hour researching rampage, and I found something in an estrogen dominance Facebook group that quite literally, once again, saved my life. The second thing I would go back and tell myself is my new mantra, and I think it's really clever, and obviously I think it's really clever or else it wouldn't be my mantra. My mantra is, there are almost never absolutes in medicine. You will notice that what I said is not an absolute because I said almost never. If a doctor says you have to do ABC before XYZ, or if you're in a Facebook support group and a patient says never take X medication, you should be wary. There is no one right way for everyone, and doctors that treat Bartonellosis and other related conditions and patients should know this. Medicine isn't that rigid, and a lot of what we think of as standard isn't actually based on as much science as we might think it is. Let me give you this as an example. Often when you're prescribed antibiotics for something like a UTI or strep throat, you're often given 5 or 10 days of the course, or you're given a week or 2 weeks of the course of antibiotics. Why is it 5 or 10 days? Because it's easy to count by intervals of 5? Or why is it 1 or 2 weeks? Because we are humans with calendars? As far as I know, bacteria can't count, nor do they abide by the human social construct that we call time. These types of things are studied, but not as much as you might think, and a lot of times they're approximations. Broad sweeping generalized statements using the terms always or never don't apply. Or should I say, mostly don't apply. I would say to myself, you need to find your own unique puzzle pieces, and you need to find the right order for you. The next thing I would tell myself is that it takes time to learn. In the beginning of my illness, I would obsess over anything that I didn't understand, like, what does collateral flow mean? What does collateral flow mean? What does Dr. Mozayeni mean when he says collateral flow in his webinar? I would tell myself to stop obsessing and to trust that eventually I will understand it. It took many, many years to work my way up to get a bachelor's and then a master's degree. So I would remind myself that with regard to medicine and biology, I'm basically back in high school, if that, and it's going to take some time to get my bachelor's in bartonellosis, so to speak. With regard to my quest to figure out what is the science and what is the truth, I would tell myself that the world isn't so black and white. There aren't just good researchers and bad researchers, and there aren't just good doctors and bad doctors. Humans are messy, and therefore that messiness will inevitably bleed into science. No one person, including me, this hurts to say, is correct all the time. There will be doctors and scientists that you respect that hold opinions on health that are different than yours, and there are doctors and scientists that you respect that sometimes believe in pseudoscience, but that doesn't necessarily negate all the good that they do. When trying to evaluate research in science, I would instead encourage myself to try and ask this question. Does this doctor slash scientist slash article slash book, etc., whatever, do more good than harm? That's how I try to think about things now. With regard to my personal health journey, I would encourage myself to use the same approach. If my practitioner says something that I don't agree with, just take the good and leave the rest. However, in the beginning, it may be very hard to take the good and leave the rest, because how the hell are you supposed to know what the good is? This is incredibly unscientific, but I would just tell myself, go with what resonates with you. In the beginning, it will be nearly impossible for you to figure out the truth on every single little thing. Is this the right test? Is this condition real? Is this the right treatment? Is this treatment quackery? You could spend hours and hours researching one topic alone and still not even get to the bottom of it because the science is conflicting and you don't have the bandwidth for that. So in the meantime, while you're learning, just go with what resonates with you. And as you learn more things, you can change your treatment or your path at literally any point in time. So the next thing is about friends. In the first few months of my illness, I was so bereft and so anxious that I couldn't even do simple tasks like ask my mom to text my friends to set up a phone date. Because I couldn't do that, I needed my friends to do that. But because I didn't tell them, how are they supposed to know that I needed them to do that? So it was a real conundrum. I didn't know how to handle my illness and they didn't know how to handle my illness, but how would they? None of them have ever had a chronically ill and disabled friend. To be honest, there were times when I felt disappointed in them, but just as it was a steep learning curve for me, it was a steep learning curve for them. Looking back now, I don't blame myself for feeling disappointed. I don't blame myself for literally any feeling I've had along this health journey because they are all valid, even the irrational ones. But looking back now, I know that they were really good friends to me before I got sick. They were really good friends to me in the beginning of my illness, and they continue to be really good friends to me now. 2.5 years into this, they have got this down pat. They know exactly what to say. They make phone dates with me. They support my Bartonella babe endeavor. I am so incredibly grateful for them. And without them, this illness would have been exponentially harder. And I don't have a book to dedicate to them, so I will have to dedicate this video to them instead. So I would go back and tell myself there is a reason that you chose them to be your friends. There's more than just a reason. There are dozens of reasons. They are loyal, they are smart, they are kind, they are thoughtful, and they love you, and you love them. I hope they never have to go through anything as devastating as this, but if they do, I will be there for them just as they have been there for me. And finally, I would say you are so much stronger than you ever gave yourself credit for. I've always thought of myself as a confident and competent person, but if current me could go back in time to newly diagnose me and tell her that I'm still kicking 2.5 years later, I would have said BS, and I wouldn't have used the abbreviation. I would have thought that I would have been tapping out by now, to use a euphemism. But then newly diagnosed me would see 87-pound current me, atrophied, leaning towards skeleton, not only still kicking, but also helping people. I would say you're a self-starter. Of course, I had help from my mom, my friends, and Bartonella experts in creating my channel, but I never thought of myself as a self-starter. I only ever saw myself as someone who would be given a task and do that task very well. Not someone who creates something basically from scratch. You created this from scratch, Jake. There is not a premix box in sight. Not only are you Bartonella babe, but you're also Bartonella brave. P.S. I also would have told myself you're gonna get really good at makeup and you're gonna get really good at crying it off. Leave a comment down below what advice you would give yourself if you could go back in time and tell yourself some advice, and give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Also, I just started making reels on Instagram, so you can go follow me over there, and on Facebook if you're not following me there already. Piper says, if you're a prairie glam, then what am I? Well, you can be my prairie dog, Piper. Get it? Bye, Bartonella buddies! Burping my baby and selling my merch all at the same time.
Burp Bartonella.
Burp Bartonella. just burping my baby. You know, I'm not shamelessly selling merchandise. Just burping my baby. Okay, let me see if there are any good Little House on the Prairie quotes, and you can tell me if they ring any bells to you, okay, Mom?
I never watched it.
Oh, did you read the book?
No.
Mary, if I was to tell you something bad, would you tell Pa? Mary says, yes. Oh, good night then.